Gonna build a mountain from a little hill.
Evening folks, this is Best in Slot with a quick little update for Planet Zoo. Now, no new animals today, though it is only 11 days until the beta, but we did get a developer journal about the facilities we'll be using in our parks, including some new ones, and how they're going to tie into the wider game, including the welfare of your animals. Now, before we get started on the new information, let's have a look at the journal's overview of the facilities already in the park, and they are, this is going to take a little while, they are as follows. The Keeper Hut, which is food for the animals, is prepared in this building. The Power Facility, which provides power to all buildings and objects that require it within a certain distance. The Quarantine, which we don't know much about yet, mainly used to separate infectious animals from healthy animals, to prevent the spread of an illness, or to hold animals new to the zoo, to check they aren't harbouring an illness that is not yet in parrot. That's actually interesting, we'll talk about that in a second. Research Centre, used by vets to research animals and improve the zoo's understanding of them, which brings multiple benefits to the zoo. Staff Room, this is where staff go to rest and also receive training. Trade Centre, where animals enter and exit the zoo. Veterinary Surgery, if an animal becomes ill or injured, this is where they need to go to be treated. The Water Treatment Plant, which cleans all water bodies within a certain distance of the plant. And finally, the Workshop, this is the new one. Mechanics perform their research in the workshop, unlocking new items for the zoo to use. Just before we get started, I've scripted the rest of this video. I'm going off script just for a second, because I didn't quite read the Quarantine one. That's very interesting, the check they aren't harbouring an illness that is not yet in parents. So this means when you purchase animals from the Trade Centre, or indeed in franchise mode from other people, from other players in the game. If I sell a chimpanzee called George on the shop, you guys will be able to search for my zoo and buy that from my franchise, basically. So you'll be able to buy George from me. That's pretty cool. I will sell you many exciting animals, and they will all be diseased. But I guess it means sometimes you're going to purchase animals and they're going to be ill and you're not going to know about it. So if you want to keep your, let's say you've already got 3 chimps and you want to bring in a 4th, it's going to be safer to move it to quarantine initially, check it out, and then bring it into your exhibit. If it's the first animal in a new exhibit, that's not really an issue, but if it is going into an existing exhibit, you don't really want to spread that disease around. So that's interesting. I think that's new information. Anyways, back onto script. All of these buildings will be necessary to run a well-functioning zoo that cares properly for its animals. As the journal mentions, if your water treatment plant goes down, then over time your water will dirty and the animals will not only dislike their environment, but they'll become more prone to infection. If that happens and you don't have a veterinary surgery, then your infection will continue to spread and hurt your animals. And if that happens and you don't have a quarantine building, then more and more and more and more animals will become infected over time. The Quarantine is interesting. This is also scripted. Initially, it does seem a little pointless if you can just cure your animals at the vet. If you've got one sick animal, you probably don't need the Quarantine unless it's like an instant transfer. Its use is going to come in, A, when you're bringing new animals in, but B, when you've got multiple animals around the park that are all ill at approximately the same time. Unless you've got 5 vet buildings, you're not going to be able to take care of all those animals simultaneously. So I think logically we can assume the quarantine section can probably hold multiple animals all at once. Now, we've seen most of these buildings before, and they all need to be kept outside your guests who don't want to see such unseemly things. One of these facilities though is new, like I said, the Workshop. Now the Workshop is where your mechanics, the lads and lasses fixing things around your park, will go to do research. This research is going to let us develop more advanced buildings for the zoo. We don't really have many examples quite yet, but the one provided by the journal is the introduction of renewable energy sources. It doesn't specify, so hopefully that means we're going to have multiple. I'd say solar and wind seem like the most obvious too, but maybe on certain maps you'd have access to geothermal and stuff like that. That might be a good way to make certain maps more interesting if only certain energy sources were available on those maps. Those seem the most obvious too for most of the maps anyway, maybe like a giant hamster wheel rigged up to a generator. If you can manage to switch your park over to renewable energy, then your zoo will gain a ratings boost, and apparently it will impact your guests in, and I quote, a different way, inverted commas. I'm not really sure what that means. It does sound oddly suspicious. Hopefully we can somehow use solar panels to create an army of beady-eyed zoo guests in a bid for world domination, but I suspect it means they're happier to donate or will gain more ecology points and stuff like that. Either way, I'm excited to see what else the mechanics will be able to develop and research. Stronger fences, storm resistant power stations, maybe even things like advanced tracks that allow the zoo trains to move along quicker and handle more guests, stuff like that. It seems it will be mainly focused on the facility side of things, but if you have any ideas for what else it could include, I would love to hear those down below. There's not much else to say on what is a somewhat light developer journal, but I'd like to cover one more thing before we go. This is the addressing of some information that's been floating around for a little while yet. I don't think I've quite talked about it yet. One of the Planet Zoo people, I think it was Bo, mentioned how there is still a surprise yet to come in terms of animal breeding. There's a few different things this could be, but I think what we're all expecting, or at least some of us are hoping for, is a chance of leucistic and even melanistic animals. What that means is animals with an absence of melanin and other pigmentations, and the latter is an abundance of melanin. Now what this typically leads to is white or black animals. Leucistic animals are similar to albino or albino, depending on your preference. Somebody will shout at me for that, as they always do. They're very similar, but they lack the trademark red eyes, and whilst Lewisism is definitely the rarer of the two, it feels like a more natural match with melanism. And one of the reasons doubly that is likely is that, of course, that Frontier's last zoo game, Zoo Tycoon 2013, and I know, it had a very similar system in place. Every baby had a very small chance of being born as melanistic or leucistic. It added a lot of replayability to the game, to an extent, as players sort of mass bred their animals in an attempt to birth these more exclusive genes. Now, given Planet Zoo adds an incest system over the top, it's a weird sentence, it'll be even more difficult than in the past, because you can't just keep breeding the same animals and you can't breed their kids over and over again without repercussion. You'll end up with some weird malformed evil babies. I'm pretty sure this is what the system will be, but again, I would love to hear some opinions from you folks down below on what else this breeding secret could possibly be. Now, I do have a third bit of news about the beta and such, but I'm going to hold on to that for a little bit till I get some more information. But something cool is happening later this month. That's all I'm saying. And that's it for now. Potential mutated babies and some eco-friendly power systems. No new animals yet this week, unfortunately, but hopefully the beta does hold a few surprises when it lands in just over a week's time. 11 days, it's crazy. I can't wait for you all to play the game and experience it just as I did. I really do think you guys are going to enjoy it. But until then, thank you very much for joining me. Throw me a like if you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you lovely lot next time. Cheers, much love as always. Bye-bye. Hey folks, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video and you want to help support me a little bit more, you can do so at patreon.com/bestinslot. There's a link in the description down below. Every little really does help in times like these, but it's not at all expected, and by just watching the video you've already helped me out massively, and it makes you a pretty cool person, so well done you. Thanks for joining me either way, I'll see you next time.